Bonsoir, Paris. I'd like to start with a short story. It was a Monday morning. I get up at 6, as usual, prepare myself for the day. We're having breakfast with the kids, my wife and me, like we always do when I'm at home. And when the kids went off to school, I drove myself to my office, sat down at my desk. I opened the upper left drawer, took out an envelope and the papers within that were in there, and I started reading them. If somehow, miraculously, their content could have changed over the weekend. Of course, it didn't. A few moments later, minutes later, my lawyer comes in. We exchange a few words, small talk. I sign those papers, and he heads off to the court of Baden-Baden. In his hands, the declaration for insolvency for my company then. The end of a 41-year history of a company, the end of a unique culture, the end of a kind of virtual family member that I have grown up with since I was 2, the end of a dream, my dream as an entrepreneur. So what has happened? In '95, long time ago, after my MBA and a few years in a boutique consultancy firm, I decided to join my parents' company, a supplier of wooden products to the furniture industry and wood processing industry. I become responsible for international projects. I open up markets in China, India, Middle East, North and South Africa. I negotiate and establish a joint venture in Ukraine. Everything was perfect. In 2004, I followed my father as a CEO of the company. In 2007, we celebrate the best year ever in turnover, in profit, and the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, in France it's Le Monde, or the equivalent to the Times in England, honors me and our activities in the Ukraine with half a page on my company, on our business. 2008 was okay, and then January 2009 started with a 50% drop in sales. And when February wasn't any better and our colleagues, competitors reported the same, it was obvious that we had a problem. What then followed was a full-scale restructuring and turnaround project. And by June 2010, we were ready to report that we succeeded. We were back to profitability. I was in South Africa then for the soccer championships, ready to go to the Ghana-Germany game. I had invited my South African clients and our Ghanaian suppliers when my phone rang. And one of our banks called me, or the manager of one of our banks, and told me, well, Mr. Overlack, I'm sorry to inform you, but we are about to mail a credit termination notice. Fortunately, I was able to ignore that fact on that evening, and we had a wonderful game and a lovely evening in Soweto. However, reality catches in. We negotiated long, negotiations failed, and then legal requirements in Germany forced me to eventually file for insolvency on that very Monday morning that I've already told you about. To put that entire story into a nutshell, I've prepared you the following, the following graph, which is a typical downturn slope that you can see in many management books on corporate crisis. Management books then add a strategic crisis, market crisis, sales crisis, profitability crisis, eventually cash crisis or liquidity crisis, and eventually insolvency or bankruptcy. What those charts don't show you is what's happening on the emotional, personal side of the entrepreneur, the managing director, the leading team. And that looks like that. With a loss of control, stress level increases up to the maximum point of burnout or meltdown, or however you want to call it. My wife then felt it was at least a double burnout. The next graph on the right side for you, that's how my restart went, or the second chance, but that's a different story for another conference. Why is that important? In 1908, two American psychologists, Yerkes and Dodson, published a theory or law that was connecting stress level and cognitive performance. And their theory was that you need a certain stress level to perform cognitively well. You get into an optimum that you can see. And if stress further increases, your cognitive skills will go down, anxiety will take over until you get into the meltdown or burnout, however you want to call that. The moment you would need a maximum of cognitive abilities, that means creativity, analytical skills, the ability to analyze complex situations, we have the least of them. Rather, you end up, if you're down on the maximum stress level, in a kind of tunnel. The tunnel we might all know, when it's just about survival, when it's about getting out of a situation, and it's only moving forward and do what we have somehow learned and experienced that will help us to survive such a situation. So, why did I fail? It's a question that I have pursued a long time after 2011. And of course, there was the world financial crisis. And of course, there were this stupid bank with a stupid negotiation strategy and a stupid loss they encountered. But my competitors who survived were in the same market. And some of them even had the same bank. So that couldn't be. So I continued starting also in the search of someone whom I could throw all my emotions, my fears, my frustration, my anger, my doubt, everything at. And the more I started looking and searching, I found many different places, but always the same person, me. There was nobody else to blame for. And a friend of mine once said, it's not about making no mistakes. It's about making fewer mistakes than your competitors. Quite obviously, I failed on that one. Now, looking back from hindsight, trying to understand why I failed and why people fail, I found maybe 5 major reasons for failure. The first reason, I call it self-deception. That's lying to ourselves. Following goals and projects that are not 100% ours because we want to please a boss, we want to encourage or enforce our career expectations. We want to following goals because we want to avoid conflict or being criticized by others. However, and we all know that, the more authentic we are, the more sense we feel in a given task, in a given goal, the more successful we'll be and the better we'll master difficult situations. The second reason why I think people fail is hubris. A tendency to believe we are unbeatable. We can do everything. The idea that as the owner of a company, I can do and comply many tasks, and I will do and manage them somehow, and not bad, instead of asking for help when it would have been necessary, asking for help from people who knew better, who had more experience, and were just experts in their field. The third reason why people fail is doubt, self-doubt. We know that we have the right goals and the right projects, and still there's this voice in our head saying, well, you can't do that. What about the people? What about if you fail? What will the people think? All the bias and beliefs, negative beliefs that we have. And this is like being on the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. We're losing a lot of energy and don't move any forward. The fourth reason is, well, when we are not taking decisions. When we're not committing ourselves to a goal, to a project, because we are afraid that somebody could criticize us, that people could ridicule us, or what would happen again if we fail. The fifth reason is what Nassim Taleb called the black swan. The events that we think are impossible, the events we cannot imagine because we have no idea of, or if we could and believe that they existed, are unlikely to believe that they will happen for us. Like a 50% market drop in January 2009 for my industry. This black swan, however, is happening today everywhere. We have disruptive business models. We have the so-called VUCA world, the volatility, the uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity in this world that we are all living in. Disruptive business models I mentioned, technology, innovation, and political events like Donald Trump or the Brexit that were unforeseeable. So if these black swans and the failure that comes, the possibility for failure comes with it, so how can we learn best from it, at least make a benefit from it? If we know that our assumptions today may not be valid tomorrow, what can we at least take out of it? We need to learn what caused a failure, what could we have done differently. And I've identified 5 steps how we can learn from failure. The first step is accept what happened. What we still see in many companies, in many corporations, that mistakes and failures are tried to be hidden, put under the carpet so nobody will see it. That's the best way not to learn. So what we need to do after acceptance, think, yes, this happened, is the second step, and that is talking about it. Like we can experience, for example, in the fuck-up nights that have spread since 2012 all over the world, where people like me and many others report from their failures and give themselves and mostly others the opportunity to learn. However, to be able to talk about such an experience requires us, and here's the third step, that we reflect and analyze what has happened, come to our conclusions and insights. And that, again, and here's the fourth step, requires time. The American professor Dean Shepard from Notre-Dame-du-Lac in Indiana and his German colleague Holger Patzel from the Technical University in Munich have conducted a series of experiments of members of failed innovation projects. And they have discovered that those team members who were given some time for reflection and so on had a better learning experience than those who immediately jumped on a new project and never really dealt with their failing experience. And then comes the fifth, and in my opinion, the most important step, and that is about your emotions. The fear, the feelings of guilt, the doubt that comes along with the experience of failure. And while all those emotions have been very, very important in our evolutionary past, because they were showing us a threat of survival, either because failure itself was a threat of this survival, or it meant the exclusion from a group which was equivalent to death at the time, is no longer valid today. We won't die. We will not survive because of a failure. So what is the benefit of the emotions today? The emotions today provide us the opportunity to learn about ourselves and to develop ourselves further the way that we go through this emotion, that we accept them and go through and understand the emotions, understand what is behind the emotions that is triggering us to become a little bit better, more advanced. Failure, in this sense, has something to do with us. Failure provides us with a learning experience and a development task. What are the possibilities that arise from failure, and what can we become that we have not been able to live in the past? Or in the words of the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, become who we are. Nobody else will do that for you. And take becoming as a chance that lies in failure. There is no secret or hidden recipe to deal with failure nor with success. Rather, they are both sides, flip sides of the same coin. Success always implies the risk of failure, and failure always bears the opportunity for success, the achievement of our own important goals, or the opportunity of becoming ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bert. Thank you. Thank you.